this is basically part 2 of yesterday because I didn't even really get to the hip flexor portion, which is almost as much of an issue as the tight hamstring problem in the work from home crowd. So if you think about it, when you're sitting at your desk, right, your knees are bent, so your hips are constantly flexed, right? But they're not actually working. So they're just kind of stuck in this position so the muscles shorten and then they're getting weak, right? Because they're not actually doing anything, but they're still stuck in this position. So we need to stretch them out. But there's a 2-part problem there. So because they're weak, we also need to strengthen them. So I'll go over some exercises that you can do to strengthen your hips. There's a million of them. Pilates is fantastic for that. But the most important thing tends to be the stretching of the hip flexors, right? So when you're sitting for extended periods of time and you get up and you're really tight in the hips, then you're going to want to stretch them as much as you want to stretch your hamstrings because those legs don't want to straighten all the way. So we'll get started the same way we did last time. So you're going to need a chair. You're going to need some pillows. I don't even have a mat. So again, you don't even need a mat. And I'm going to tell you some things that you can do when you're like laying on your bed or even if you're laying down on a couch. And the best way to kind of stretch the hip flexors is to stay out of the low back. All right, so grab your chair, grab the back of your chair, right? And then we're going to start by bringing those forearms down on the chair. Again, somewhere between the elbows and wrists. And then go ahead and walk those feet back underneath the hips. So your body is making this L shape, right? And again, if your hamstrings are so tight and this is very uncomfortable, walk your feet a little bit in and bend the knees a little bit. If you can, stretch the legs back and stretch them all the way straight. And again, feet are underneath those hips, arms are straight. And then from here, just start to let the chest fall down towards the floor. So again, you're stretching through the upper back. So again, common thing, tightness in the upper back because you're rounded forward over a computer all day long. You're rounded forward in a car, you're rounded forward over your phone. So we want to take the back in the other direction, right? So not rounding forward, rounding back. So we can kind of fix the thoracic spine into the position and the natural curve that should be there, not the overly curved that we get into because of the rounding forward. So just take a couple deep breaths in and out here. Again, just breathing into the backs of the legs. So we're stretching through the hamstrings as well, stretching through the shoulders, all the things that need stretching right now in your body, upper back, hamstrings, shoulders. So that rounding forward affects the shoulders too, right? So you gotta send them in the proper direction too. But let's take 2 more breaths here. Big inhale in, long exhale out. See if that chest can get a little heavier towards the floor. Good. 1 more big inhale in, long exhale out. Good. And then just round, come on up. Go ahead and walk it in. So we're going to use the chair for the hip flexors, but I'm going to take you through a more passive stretch that's not as intense to kind of start the process of stretching out those hips. So go ahead and grab some pillows. Again, I'm using the same ones that I use, so I like the rectangular shape. If you have a Pilates ball, you may or may not. That is also very effective for these stretches, but most of us, you know, if we're not doing Pilates all the time, we don't have a Pilates ball. So grab some pillows. I'm going to use, we'll start with 1, and then if you can take it up a notch, then you're going to add 2. So 1 might be enough. Again, depending on how tight your hips are. Go ahead and come down onto the floor, laying on down, and then you're going to take 1 of your pillows. So knees are bent, feet are on the floor. You're going to take 1 of your pillows. You're going to pick up your hips, and you're going to place that pillow just underneath your right hip. So just underneath the right side. And then you're going to press onto the pillow and let your left hip fall to the ground. So your pelvis is tilted. So your right hip is higher than the left. And then from there, you're going to straighten out your right leg. Just keep the left knee bent for now. So straighten out the right leg. Let the hip open. Let those muscles lengthen, right? Let the hip turn out and just relax there. Now, if this doesn't feel like enough for you, go ahead and grab a second pillow and just place it on top of that other one so you get a little bit more height, right? And then set your hip down, bring the left hip down, keep the knee bent, straighten out the right leg. Good. And then from here, you're going to reach your right arm up overhead and just relax in this position. Again, letting the hip open up. Big inhale in. Big exhale out. And then go ahead and straighten out your left leg. And then bring your left arm up overhead as well. So you might not realize what's happening at the moment because again, it's a very passive thing. You have a hip flexor muscle, it's called psoas. It connects from your low back to the front of your hip. That one's a deeper muscle, so it's harder to stretch, but in this position, you're actually getting a little bit of a stretch there. And then you're also just elongating the muscles in the front of the hip, which again, when you're sitting are bent, right? And they're contracted, but they're not actually working. They're just hanging out in that shortened position. So we want to lengthen them, right? So you can stay in this position as long as you need to. I'm not going to stay here for as long as we need just for time's sake, but you know, if this feels good and you want to hang out here and you can maybe like work or whatever while you're doing it, by all means do that. And same thing if you had a Pilates ball, you would just lift up your hip and you'd stick the ball underneath. All right, let's switch sides. So go ahead and bend your right knee, bend your left knee, pick up the hips, go ahead and take those pillows out and then just settle down on the floor for a second. So just sit flat, straighten out your legs. And if you've done this for an extended period of time, you might feel the difference and just noticing that the right side might feel a little bit longer. You might feel like your leg's a little bit longer than left. So yeah, we want to start to feel those differences, but it might be very subtle and it might be very obvious depending on how tight your hips are. All right, so go ahead and take those pillows to the other side. Again, if you're doing two, do two, just do whatever you did on the first side. And then you're just gonna pick your hips up, place those pillows under. Again, left hip is raised, right hip, keep the knee bent, right hip comes down to the floor. So your right hip is down, left hip is lifted. So your pelvis is in this tilted position, right? But it shouldn't affect your low back. So if your low back is hurting this position, just skip the stretch altogether. All right, here we go. You're gonna straighten out your left leg. Again, let the hip open, just feel that stretch through the front of the body, right? So again, that deep psoas muscle is getting a bit of a stretch here. And then the front of the leg is getting a stretch here too. Go ahead and reach your left arm up overhead. Breathing into the front of the body. So breathe into that area, right? It seems silly, but it actually works. So when you put your focus into those muscles, we can help sort of help them along with the breath. Go ahead and straighten out your right leg. And then bring your right arm up overhead and then just hang out here. But again, you want to feel that tilt of the pelvis, but you don't want it to be straining your low back at all. And again, you're just breathing into the front of the body. So go ahead and take a couple more deep inhales in. Long exhales out. And again, for time's sake, we won't stay here for too long, but if you want to stay in this longer, by all means, just relax, hang out here, right? Your muscles have been contracted in that seated position all day probably. So even just laying flat and laying on the ground is probably very good for you if I'm being honest. All right, from here, go ahead and bend your left knee, bend your right knee, and then go ahead and lift up your hips. Go ahead and take those pillows out, get them out of the way. Again, be careful with your movements, right? Because we are working around to the low back as well. And if you have a sensitive low back, we can easily tweak it. And that is not what we're after. We're trying to kind of fix everything, right? So go ahead and straighten out your legs onto the floor, let the hips open, let the knees open, feet open, and then just bring your arms by your sides, take a second there and just let everything kind of open up a bit. Good, we'll stay here for one big inhale in. Big exhale out. All right, so bridging is an exercise that's great for the body for strengthening, but it also, when you lift your hips up, you're stretching through the hip flexors. So another great stretch for the hip flexors. And if you want to make it a more passive stretch, you can absolutely do that. So bring your feet in closer to you. So they're about hip distance. So not the widest part of your hips, but sort of sits bones distance. And then we're going to lift up without the pillows, and then we'll use the pillows so you can decide, do I want to make this a more active exercise or do I want to make this a more passive stretch? So just bring your arms down by your sides. Head's going to stay down, so keep the neck out of it. If you have any knee pain, walk your feet forward a little bit more, so make that angle a little bit greater. Otherwise, feet come relatively close to your butt. And then from here, take a big inhale breath. On your exhale, press down into the arms, press your hips up off of the floor. So again, here's that lengthening through the front of those hips, right? So that's stretching through the hip flexors. We're also working the back body, so that's a good thing. And then lower back down. Do it again, exhale, press up. Inhale as you lower. Good, 3 more like that, lift. So when you're lifting, one common thing that happens is people will lift up into their bridge and then they'll stick those ribs out towards the ceiling and really overly arch the back, which does not need to happen. So pull those front ribs in, lower back down, and you may not even lift that high off the ground, but you're still going to get that stretch through the front of the hips. Good, last one, lift your hips up. Good, pillow should be nearby, so go ahead and take a pillow, place it underneath your hips, so right where your tailbone, low back area is, and then you can hang out here. If you don't feel like you're high enough, grab that second pillow, lift up your hips. Again, try not to strain your back as you're doing this, so make sure your pillows are not too high. And then you can just hang out in this supported bridge. If you have yoga blocks at home, you can stick that underneath your pelvis. Just make sure it's at that sort of flattened shelf part of your pelvis. It doesn't come to the arched part of your low back, and it doesn't sit sort of on the fleshy part. There's sort of like a really nice spot to place it. And then you can just relax on it that way. If you want to straighten out your legs, you can do that too. Just keep the feet and hips parallel. And just make sure that this is comfortable on your low back sitting in this extension. And then you can just breathe into the front of the legs there. And again, hang out here for as long as comfortable. That big inhale breaths. Long exhales out. When it comes to stretching, breath is everything. It helps us relax. It helps us stay in the stretch for as long as we need to. And helps us just kind of get through it, right? And it helps us relax. I might have just said that, but I said it twice. So it helps us relax. The breath helps us relax. All right, go ahead and lift your hips up. Get those pillows out. Again, being mindful of the low back. And then just let those hips settle down on the floor. All right. Now I'll take you through some more intense hip stretches, especially if you have very tight ones. So we're going to come up. We're going to find our chair. So again, just make sure you do that however is comfortable. So you roll to the side and come up. Just be mindful always of your low back. All right, so go ahead and grab your chair. We're going to use the seat side of the chair. So what I've noticed with a lot of my clients, so there's plenty of stretches that you can do, yoga stretches, right, that involve coming down to the floor. We're going to do this. So they involve, coming down to all fours and then bringing the leg forward and then stretching back. But guess what? Most people, when they try to do this, can't touch the floor. They really, honestly, if you're really tight from working from home, you probably look more like this. And a lot of my clients will go like this and try to grab to the floor. And of course you can place things underneath your hands, but guess what? A chair is super helpful. All right, and we've been using this chair the whole time, so why not stick with the same props? All right, so find your chair. Place hands on the chair. You're gonna take your right foot forward. So make sure the knee is directly above the ankle. And then from here, your left knee is underneath the hip, but we're gonna deepen the stretch. So you're gonna tuck your left toes, pick up your knee, move it a little bit further back, and then untuck the toes, and here we are. All right, hopefully you have a chair that is movable, right? So then you can get more into the stretch, or you can just move your hands forward. Regardless, we're already here, we're already stretching, okay? So make sure the right knee stays over the ankle, and then from here, just get heavy into those hips, and you're gonna feel that stretch through the front of your right hip. You're gonna feel that stretch into the left inner thigh, and even into the left front of the hip as well. Good, and then just breathe here. Stay here for a while, right? We wanna stretch out through those hip flexors. If you can, if you are flexible enough and wanna bring your hands to the floor, then do that, and then lean in, always constantly leaning in and getting heavier so you can stretch through the front of that right hip. Big inhale breaths. Big exhales out. Again, it takes a long time to stretch the hips, so stay in this as long as you can. Let those muscles lengthen and breathe. Deep breaths in, deep breaths out. Good. And then just acknowledge where you're at, right? If your hands are on the chair, they're on the chair. All right, from here, if you can, tuck those left toes, pick up the left knee. Now you're in that lunge stretch, but you're gonna feel a deeper stretch through the left hip flexor. So again, it's a lot of work to stay in this position. Use the chair, put your hands on the chair, right? And then you probably won't stay in this as long as you do the stretch with your knee down. But if you can stay here, keep getting heavier in those hips, stretching through those inner thighs. Good. And then go ahead and bring your right knee down to the floor. Carefully bring your left knee back to meet the right. We're going to switch sides. So right foot forward. Again, tuck the left toes, move the knee back a little bit further, untuck, and then lean in, get heavy there. Good. And just breathe. Again, I've seen all levels of flexibility, and most people are not flexible whatsoever right now because of just all the sitting that we do. And it's so hard when you work from home. And that's, you gotta get up and stretch a little bit if you can. And again, these are easy stretches to do because you're at a chair and you can use a chair, right? So I hope that this is very helpful for you. All right, so again, breathe, keep getting heavier in those hips. It's probably a lot, and that's okay. If you start to do this sort of every day and take little breaks and throughout the day and try to do this, then hopefully your body will thank you later. All right, go ahead and tuck your left toes, pick up your knee, and then just hang out there. Again, use the chair and breathe. Get heavier if you can. Just think longer in the front of that left hip. Good, big inhale, breath. Big exhale out. Good, go ahead and set that left knee down. Go ahead and bring your right knee back to meet the left. And then we're just gonna take a seat on your chair. Go ahead and take a seat. Isn't that nice? You get to use the chair the whole time. You're like, but I'm trying to get away from my chair. You go from sitting on your chair to stretching on your chair. All right, we're gonna do figure 4 stretch. So go ahead and cross right ankle over left knee. And then if this is enough of a stretch, you can gently press your right knee open with your hand to feel a deeper stretch through the muscles surrounding the hip. Just keep your right foot flexed so that you can keep your knee joint in proper alignment. And then from here, if this is not enough and you want to take this further, keep your spine long, again, straight line from the back of the head to the tailbone, and then you're just gonna lean forward, and then you're gonna feel that deeper stretch through the back. Again, you can help your knee open by pressing down, but again, be very light because we don't want to affect the knee joint. We just want to stretch those muscles in the hip. Good, and just keep taking those nice deep breaths in and out. And again, hang out here for as long as you can, right? Because again, hips are very hard to stretch. It takes a while. And then every exhale, maybe you get a little longer, you get a little bit lower. But just keep that spine long. So you don't want to round. Again, we're trying to fix that posture in the back as well. So think long spine always. Good, from here, go ahead and uncross. Let's do the other side. Left ankle, right knee. Again, keep that foot flexed. You can guide that knee open with your hands, gently pressing on that knee. And then if you want to take it further, keep that spine long, fold forward, exhale. Good, so you're reaching out through the crown of the head and just breathe into those muscles surrounding those hips. Keep the hips centered, right? So you're not leaning to the left or right. Good, and then just keep going with those breaths. Big inhales in, long exhales out. And again, for time's sake, I'm not going to do this for as long as I need to, but again, if you can do these for a shortened period of time, several times a day, do that, please. But if you can, at the end of your day, kind of do this for an extended period of time. Good, one more big inhale breath. Big exhale out. Good, and then go ahead and uncross there. All right, we're gonna do one more thing here. So I'm gonna get the pillows out of the way. You don't need your chair. You're gonna use your wall though. All right, here we go. And this will help you, this will give you a little strength exercise as well. So go ahead and take a seat. You're gonna face away from your wall. So one thing that people do when we're trying to do hamstring stretches with legs straight out in front of you and you're trying to reach forward, this is what I see all the time. Trying to grab ankles, feet, and this is about as far as most people can go, honestly. So if you put your back up against the wall, that'll kind of help you stay in that upright position and then keep those legs nice and straight. So we're stretching through the hamstring. So this was just to trick you into getting into some hip flexor exercises. Okay, so right now it's in that state where you're used to, right? You're just sitting, their muscles aren't really doing much. They're just in that contracted position. So from here, you're gonna flex your feet or point the feet, whichever, well, let's flex the feet. Okay, again, keep that nice straight spine up against the wall, and then you're just gonna lift your right leg up. You can feel those hip flexors working, and then lower the right leg down. Good, switch sides, left leg lifts, lower. And you can just keep doing these just to work the hip flexors. You're gonna be working the quads as well, but we want to strengthen those hip flexors. Otherwise, they're just going to be in this weakened and tight state, right? So strength is important as well as the stretching. So you can do those as many times as you want. I have a million more exercises, but that will be for another video. And then from here, let's just start to lean forward. Start to bring your hands as far as they'll go without rounding forward, right? So again, keep that wall as the guide for your spine. And then if you can, just keep walking forward more. You can take your back away from the wall and then just keep coming forward, forward. You may not even get here, right? But just breathe, keep the feet flexed. Keep trying to lengthen through the spine. Again, we gotta train all the muscles in the back to not be so rounded, right? So you wanna keep that long spine. So this is an exercise in and of itself, right? Good. And just keep taking those nice deep breaths in and out. Good, and then go ahead and come on up. From here, you're gonna bend your right knee. Take the right foot to the inside of your left thigh. Now, this knee might not be anywhere near the floor. So again, you can use your pillows, place it underneath the knee, and then just let the inner thigh open up and relax. If you want to do more hamstring stretching, you can turn your chest over that left leg. Again, lengthen through the spine, fold forward over that left leg, and continue to let this knee fall towards the floor and get heavier, heavier there. Again, long spine as you lean forward. Good, one more big inhale in. Big exhale out. This will also stretch you through the low back as well, so we like that. Switching sides, lengthen out the right leg. Left knee bends, left foot to the inside of your right thigh. Here we go. Just again, if you need a pillow underneath, and stay, again, please stay in these as long as feels comfortable, as long as you like. You're not gonna hurt anything doing that, right? And you might get to a point where you're like, this is unbearable, I cannot take it anymore, then stop. Get out of it. All right, here we go. And just notice as you go through these stretches, hopefully you continue to do these. Notice how they feel going forward. If they start to get easier, you start to feel better when you're working. That's the hope, right? Okay, if you're folding forward, turn your chest over your right leg. That's why I'm making these. All right, and then hinge forward, again, hinging from the hips. And I'm not rounding and collapsing. Again, we're doing that enough. So just keep that spine nice and long, just training everything to go where it's supposed to. Good. Big inhale, breath. Big exhale out. Good, and then lift back up. Good, and then from here, keep your back up against the wall. Bring the soles of the feet together. Again, let the knees open here. Place pillows underneath your knees if you need. Again, this seems, for those that are super flexible, this might seem silly, like, oh, I can easily bring my feet together and I can easily open my knees, but most people can't. I see people all week long and I know what normal bodies look like these days, and it's not flexible. So that's why I'm doing this. So again, I hope that this helps you a lot. Good, take one more big inhale breath. Big exhale out. If you do want to deepen the stretch, you can bring your hands to your ankles and then bring your elbows to the insides of your knees. Again, keep spine long and then hinge forward. So let your elbows press into the knees so they help assist opening them further. But again, keep that spine long, and you can pull on the ankles and pull down on the elbows, or press down on the elbows rather. Good, one more big inhale breath. Big exhale out. Good, and then go ahead and lift on up. So one thing that I was saying that you can do if you're laying on your bed, oh, I wish I could just angle. I don't want okay, let me see if I can do this. If I can angle my computer so that I can show you, because my bed is literally right here. Okay, so I'm hoping that the lighting does not get all messed up. Okay, here's my bed. Isn't she nice? Yes, she's so cute. Okay, so when you wake up in the morning, there are things that you can do to stretch, right? So you can lay off the side of your bed. So one thing that happens is you want to lengthen through the hip flexor, right? But how do we do that? You essentially want to bring your leg back, right? But how do you do that if you're laying flat on the floor? It's very hard. So if you have a lifted surface like a bed or a couch, then you can do that there. So when you're laying on your bed, you can come, I hope that it doesn't get too dark, and I hope that this isn't weird. Okay, so you're gonna come to the side of your bed. You're gonna let your, I'm on my left side of the bed, so I'm bringing my left leg off the side of the bed. And then you can bring your foot flat. And this is assuming that your bed is lifted off of the ground. Technically, you can do this, you know, if you have a lowered bed too as well, and you can kind of bend the knee, you can tuck the toes on the floor, and then just let that hip flexor stretch out, right? Or just keep your foot flat on the floor, your hip flexor is stretching there. Another thing you can do, just make sure you're supported and you're gonna roll off your bed, and make sure your right shoulder blade and your right hip is staying down on the bed as well. Another thing you can do in this position for your shoulders, reach your left arm up, let it fall out to the side, and then you'll stretch through the front of that chest, again, fixing some of that rounding. You can also reach your arm up, bend the elbow to 90, and then let the hand and arm fall backwards. Again, just opening up everything, but make sure that you're still staying centered and you're not starting to fall off, because that's going to take you out of that stretch. Good, and then just breathe there as long as you want, and then you can repeat on the other side. So hopefully that was not strange. But yeah, so that's pretty much all. Now you know what the whole layout of my bedroom looks like. Hopefully these things were very helpful for you, and I will continue to do more of these because, again, I have a million shoulder stretches for the rounding and the upper back, so I will continue to make these because you are going to continue to work from home. So I will see you next time.